Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Poema podcast. I am James Prescott, your host. Welcome to the show. Really great to have you all back again. And I'm really delighted to welcome back a good friend of mine, an author, a poet, um, Marla Taviano. Welcome back.
Thank you, James. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, no, it's really great to have you back on the show. This is the third time I think you've been on the show. Um,
Yeah, we
uh,
had a fun talk about my first book, and then we talked about one of our favorite shows, Schitt's Creek, and
that's
now we're
right.
going to
Yeah,
talk about my new
absolutely.
book.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
we got your second
so
book,
cool.
which is exciting. I've just been reading a little bit of it. It's called Jaded. It's another book of poetry about the deconstruction journey, but this is a slightly different. This has a slightly different tone to it than your last one. I think you in the kind of introduction you call it. It's what is it? It's bitchy little sister or something like that.
Yeah, Jaded is Unbeliev's bitchy little sister, is what I say. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because when having started to read it, that's very clear from the tone and the type of material that you're writing about. It's a very different kind of book, which kind of reflects a different part of the kind of what people call deconstruction journey. So tell us a bit about how this book came about.
Yeah, so the book opens up like this: jaded, adjective, tired, bored, or lacking enthusiasm, typically after having had too much of something, made cynical by experience and over it already, but also can't seem to let it go. And then I have another poem toward the beginning too, where I ended Unbelieve with kind of this freedom, like, where am I going to go next? This is exciting. And that was my plan. The book was going to be titled More, and I was going to share my like big expansive thoughts on God, like all the new things that the world that had been opened up to me, and it was going to be just really positive and and happy. And as I sat down to write it, what I say in the poem is jaded wouldn't leave me the hell alone. Like, it just, a part of it was so much that kept happening in the United States and around the world. Um, and so much of it too was also this unresolved, like the healing that I needed to do, like this trauma that I had not completely healed from. And so I realized not only was it dishonest for me to move straight into that, yay, I'm free, everything's great. I also couldn't do it. I had some things to get off my chest, some bitterness, some anger. And I wouldn't say that that's all the way off of my chest now after writing this, but this really, really helped. So the whole book is not angry and bitter. And actually, one of my friends, Robert Monson, who was
Oh,
one of my sensitivity readers, and one of his the feedback he gave me was, you start off really spicy and then you kind of calm down. Like, did you mean to calm down? And I said, well, I didn't necessarily know I was going to calm down, but that is kind of what happened, because as I talked through it and wrote through it, that did calm me down. And does that mean that now I am calm and happy and everything's fine and I can move into that next book? Well, I am currently writing that next book, but this might be a lifelong process of dealing with this trauma. And of course, everything's still raging all around us. There was just another tragic mass shooting in the US just yesterday. So
hmm.
that's never going to end. I've realized I can be, like Walt Whitman, the poet from the 1800s, said, I contain multitudes. And I do. Like, I can have all of those things in me. I don't want to be like, I don't want bitterness and anger to be what defines me. But I think that there's definitely righteous anger that helps us fight injustice, and being angry on behalf of other people and myself in some situations, but really on behalf of other people who have been hurt and oppressed by Christianity in particular, and by white supremacy and homophobia and all of that. So yeah, that's how the book starts, where I say, "Hey, I wanted to do this book, but I needed to do this one first." And it kind of fits like a whole trilogy does anyway. And I know that you watch so many movies and all this stuff, and that's kind of how it is. It's like the beginning, and then you've got this really dark, angsty middle, and then you can have the happy ending. And I'm not so naive to think that my third book will be the happy ending to end all be all, but um, I do think it'll point me in the direction then of going forward. And so a lot of my going forward involves going back and trying to understand my past, try to make up for some things in my past, to repair harm that I have done, um, usually unknowingly, but not always. And so, and yeah, you know what that's like. We've talked about that before. Um, that
Mhm.
now that we've gotten out of this, you look back and think, how how was I in that? How was I a part of that? How did I believe that? How did I live like that? And I just am very curious to know. And I think it's part of my healing journey.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I'm always fascinated by the creative process, and um, because often you set out to write one thing, and and kind of your body or your whatever your trauma or your muse or whatever you call it, is they say like no, no, no.
Yeah,
This isn't what we want to say right now.
that's what happened. Yeah.
This is what I want to say right now. And something completely different comes out, and it looks like that's what happened here. It's like I think books get written when they're ready to be written.
Yeah.
They won't be written before when they're ready.
Yeah.
Um, and it looks like that book that you intended it wasn't ready to be written yet. You needed to do this before that. Um,
Yeah.
and you're right about that arc. There is a kind of arc of like they have that first kind of journey into discovering who you are and breaking free of who you were, and then there's the reality of it, which is the nitty gritty day to day working through of things, which is difficult and facing up to new challenges, and that kind of darkest, the sequel that's darker than the original.
Hmm.
And yeah, and you're right though. It's not always as simple as like a three-act story. The story doesn't really end. It just keeps going in different stages.
Yeah.
Um, and there's definitely a natural progression from unbelief to this to jaded, and I'm sure there'll be a natural link to whatever comes next because that's how creativity works. It taps into what's already going on inside of us. I think
Yeah.
is that what you find?
Yeah, it really has. And I have just been like, it's been so affirming to me as people have, like, it just came out about a month ago. So we did a soft launch. This is a long story. We can get into it if you want, but I have a publisher helping me this time. I self published my first one, but we did a soft launch because I really wanted to get it out before Christmas. And we could get it on Amazon before Christmas, but not the other places online. So we did that. So it's been like kind of a slow start, but a lot of people have the book, and I've been getting a lot of feedback, and so many people are saying that it just resonates with them where they are. And obviously it's not going to resonate with everyone if someone is at a different point in their journey. But you don't have to be at the exact point that I am for some of these things to resonate. And it's been cool too. The poetry, like you said, it's kind of abstract. So people can read into it more than I even put in there. I've had people tell me like that I love how you said this because of this. And I didn't even mean that, or I didn't realize that that's what happened, but they brought their own experiences and thoughts and ideas to it. And so they're getting more out of the poetry than I even put in. So I'm really grateful that it is in book form and it's in people's hands and they can read it. And that I've had a lot of people say to me, I'm surprised that this is a hopeful book because the title is Jaded. The way I start out is pretty negative, and the subtitle is A Poetic Reckoning with White Evangelical Christian Indoctrination. And that's really what it is. I am reckoning with my past, with what's happening now. And there's a poem at the end where I clarify that this isn't a complete reckoning. Like, I didn't reckon and it's all better and everything's fine now. It's kind of like an incomplete reckoning, a partial reckoning, a beginning reckoning. But especially in the US, where people are, I don't know, we have these ideas about our country and how noble and wonderful our heritage is, and we want to whitewash that and forget about all the hard stuff and not make those connections between slavery and Black people facing oppression now and all of these different things. And people want to just start now and move forward without looking back and without reckoning. You cannot do that. Everything is in the past is tied to now. There's a direct link, and you have to reckon with that. We have to make those things right. And I am here for that. Like, I am I'm here for that, for helping people do that, for helping wake people up to that. Um, some days are really encouraging, some days are discouraging, and yeah, but I'm committed to it for life, to be on this journey where everyone can flourish, instead of just rich white men flourishing. I want everyone to flourish here in the US and everywhere. I mean, I'm passionate about all human flourishing and other than human flourishing too. The more that I read indigenous authors, and think more about creation and trees and um, our animal friends, and yeah, it's a lot. So a lot of that is going into this new book where um, my perspective has just broadened hugely. I did not realize how narrow my focus was. I didn't realize how small my bubble was, and now I can really see the world for the first time. And there's so much to see and so much to learn.
Mm, yeah, and that's really interesting that you found yourself ending on a more hopeful note, having said it was going to be a reckoning. Because and I've seen this in movies as well, where you have um, stories of somebody processing grief and processing trauma and full of anger and rage and hatred and like bitterness at the beginning, and they end up in a hopeful place, even in
Yeah,
the midst of this is still happening, this is still difficult, this is still painful, this is still hard, but I feel a bit more hopeful about the future. Um, and I think that's part of the journey. It's like we have to reckon with our trauma and our grief and our anger, and and some of it's righteous anger, some of it's justified anger at
yeah,
injustice, that and even anger at ourselves for the role we played in that, especially as white people,
yeah,
both of us. And like, because I've had that, but been through that and been angry at myself and what I did and what I participated in and what I allowed to happen, you know. And that's a valid part of the journey, if you're a white person on this journey, that's something we have to do. And it's not comfortable, but it's necessary. And the more your eyes are open, the more you're aware of what's really happening in the world, and the more anger you feel about that. And that's a normal thing, because we're in some ways we're powerless to control it. In some ways we're not powerless to control it, but in some ways we are.
yeah,
And yeah, so that anger is completely valid. And when you're grieving something that you've left behind, um, there's always a level of anger in there somewhere. So like it makes a lot of sense that you would start out in that way, and then come to a bit of a more hopeful conclusion through the process, because creativity is what is, as we both know, it can be therapeutic.
yeah.
Um, like, I mean, how did you find the process of writing this book to be therapeutic?
Well, I think we talked about this last time because I was talking about how writing is healing for me, and you were saying that some trauma had happened to you and
mm,
writing was a part of that. And then it was really hard for you to write. And
mm,
that just like pained my heart because I have not experienced that. And well, it's mostly, and I'm just really thankful that I have writing as a way to process that. And that's what I've always done, whether it's in just a personal journal, or I used to have a blog for about 10 or 15 years that I would just pour all kinds of stuff into, or books. That's Writing it down is how I figure out what I think and what I'm feeling, and I make connections. And sometimes it's not until I see the words on the page that I can make a connection. Oh, this is why I feel this way, or this is like this, and this is why this happened. And when I can come up with metaphors that can try, like using a metaphor to help explain a concept to someone that they might not get, I can use that, a concept they do understand, to help explain something that they don't understand. And so that's just been the medium that I've always used. So when I sat down to write that happy book and then this book came out, I like you said, I just took that to be a sign that this needed to come out. Like, this is in me and needed to come out. So where some people might yell or hit a wall or go for a run or something, when I have things inside of me, I not that I never yell or hit a wall, but I just get it out onto a page, and that really truly helps me. um and I've, over the years, have tried to find where that balance is between things that I'm just writing down privately for me and things that I am sharing, whether online or in a book or with other people verbally. I don't know that I've always gotten it right. I don't know that there's a right and a wrong way to share. I know some people think that you should be open and transparent and share all these things. Other people think you shouldn't be like just spewing your trauma out all over the place. You should deal with some of it first. And I don't think that there's a conclusion that people have come to for the best way to do that. But what I have found is that when I am open about things that I'm struggling with or pain that I'm feeling, um, that resonates with people, and they feel a connection with me, and they feel less alone. Because I lost a lot of friends and some family members as I deconstructed. And the friends that I've made along the way, I now have so many friends, most of them online. I don't have very many close friends in real life here who live in my town. But um, I have all these people that I can go to, all these people who understand. And some people who are just beginning their journey, they don't have that. They don't have maybe anyone in their life that understands what it's like to start questioning faith, to start changing your views. And so I think it's really important when people can hear me say, I'm also struggling with this. And for me, being not on the other end of it, like I'm not at the end of it, but I don't feel that deep pain and that anguish that I did at the beginning when people first started disowning me or whatever. Not that it can't affect me. I was telling a
mm,
friend yesterday that just this week, two different things, one involving my ex-husband and one involving my sister who disowned me. Both of those things, some things happened and I was in tears over this. And I thought, dang it, like, when am I going to be fine and be healed and this doesn't bother me anymore? Well, maybe I never will get there, but I know that I am healing, and I'm not spending all of my days sad and crying. Like, I am happy, I'm becoming more myself, I'm adjusting, all of these things. So it's not linear. But writing has really, really, really helped me heal for a long, long time now. That's just how I do it. And I feel bad for people who that's not how they do it, because that's just what I know. And obviously that's not how everyone is wired. So as long as you everyone can find what it is that they can do to express that, to get feelings out, to work through them, then I hope that they do find that, because I do know that keeping it bottled up inside um, is not good for anyone, not emotionally, not mentally, not physically, to keep all of your feelings inside. So whether you share them with a friend, whether you go outside and burn off energy, whether you write it down, whether you talk to a counselor or a therapist, just being able to find a way, whatever works for you, to work through your feelings, your trauma, all of that. And I know you do a lot of work with that. And I know on your podcast too, that's another thing where you are talking through with people. And I'm sure it's like a reciprocal thing where they're sharing with you, you're sharing with them, you're giving them a chance to unload sometimes, and
Mm.
giving them a conversation partner and a platform. And then it goes back and forth. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's all right. Yeah, we do need to get whatever's inside out. I mean, we have our own ways of doing it, but the most important thing is that it gets out. Because bottling things up is not healthy. um, if you bottle things up for too long, they'll end up taking control of you, and
Yeah.
and that happened to me initially. 25 years ago, something like that. Just after my mum died, I bottled things up for a long time, and
Mm,
eventually I couldn't anymore. Eventually they got the better of me, and I had to do something. And um, once I started doing something about it, and started talking about it, and writing about it, and
mm.
everything, it changed. It healed. And yeah, you're right. Um, and writing has been that for me as well. Writing can still be that for me.
Hmm.
It's not at the moment. I still find it very difficult to write, and there's lots of reasons for that. Part of it is that trauma that we talked about. Part of it is
Yeah.
other things, kind of emotional burnout, because it's always an emotional thing for me to write. It takes emotional energy for me to
Mm,
write because I write with my whole heart,
yeah.
um, and so that's part of it too. But you're right, and doing these podcasts, yes, that is definitely is kind of therapeutic for me too because I get to hear other people's stories, so you're not alone,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and also you get to share a bit of I get to be able to share a bit of my story, and so there is definitely I mean this is a creative thing as well. This is a creative project as well. So it's it is whenever you create something of you goes into that, and that process can definitely be healing, and
And we
transformative.
were talking, sorry, we were talking before you pressed record about all of the different things that you've talked about on the podcast, the things you have coming up, all these like different episodes and series. And I was saying how it's amazing. Your range is like you've got this such a big range of things that you are knowledgeable about, passionate about. Um, and I love that for you. And I have found over the years, like talking to people, I used to be a public speaker for a while before we moved to Cambodia. And so often people just really even struggle to find something that they love or something that they care about. So even though I know that you've gone through a lot of trauma. I know the last few months have been difficult. Um, it's just I'm really glad that you have things that you love, like things that you're passionate about, and it's such a wide variety of things. Like when we're talking about pop culture and TV and movies and stuff, and some people say, well, that's frivolous or that doesn't matter. That's not how I see it. Like I see it as something that ignites passion. You can do it just for fun, or it could be something where you see all kinds of life things in that, and you could talk about that, and you can break things down, whatever it is for you. And then that too is art that other people made. Like they put themselves in this art, then we enjoy it, and then we bring ourselves to it. And then if we find people who also like it and we get to make that connection there, it's just I just love it. So whether it's movies, TV, podcasts, books, um, paintings, whatever kind of creativity people are doing, or whatever kind of art they're making, um, it's just a really, really cool way to connect with people, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is. I've made so many friendships through this podcast. It's been an unexpected gift after doing this show. And I never get bored of doing it. I never get tired of doing it. I never lose the joy. I've never lost the joy of making this show. Like the real joy for me in this is the actual making of it. The actual recordings themselves, doing the recordings,
Yeah.
like the kind of posting it on the website and all of those kind of things is like that that doesn't take as long to do, but it feels like it's harder work than sitting for an
Yeah.
hour with a guest and just talking and listening and that because this is where the joy is and I think it will continue to be where the joy is.
It's too bad you don't have a whole lot of money and you can just hire a producer or an editor, a
Yeah,
marketer.
right. Yeah, like if anyone's listening who wants to do that for me for free, like
Uh,
I'm here. Like, or a sponsor who wants to sponsor my show, who's ethical and like moral
that's
and
kind of how
just
I
and
feel.
everything. Like,
Yeah, I feel that way about my books too, because I would like to write the book and then maybe talk about it a little bit. I don't want to, but I do like to go on podcasts and talk about it. But some of the marketing things are trying to get it in more people's hands or get people to write reviews. It can be taxing because um, that's not where my gifting is.
same,
But I
absolutely
mean,
same.
it
Yeah,
is what it is, and everybody goes through it. Unless you do have a lot of money, or unless you're really famous and popular and have a team behind you that's doing all this all this for you. But it's cool too. I mean, it's it's a neat experience, and I've again bonded with a lot of people over the experience of publishing a book and trying to get the word out, and a lot of mutual things like let's do a book swap. Like you wrote poetry, I wrote poetry. Let's swap our books and let's read them. Let's tell people about them. And that's one of the things I'm passionate about is reading books and sharing them, like books that other people have written. And that's kind of a way that I show love to my neighbor is here, you wrote this book, you poured your heart into it. I'm going to read it. I'm going to share it with my people. Hopefully some people will read it, buy it. Um, yeah. And same with the podcast, like just sharing each other's podcasts or whatever creative endeavor that they've done. So yeah, I'm glad that Twitter is still around. I know we talked some about that where we thought for a minute there that it was going down forever and a lot of people have left and it's way different. Um, but I'm glad it's still hanging in there as a place to make connections and to share things and
yeah,
um
yeah. I agree. Yeah, I mean, like this is that whole thing that's happened with Twitter has actually helped me be less addicted to it.
oh yeah, yeah.
I'm kind of I use different social networks a little bit, but I'm not addicted to any of them.
Mhm.
And I have healthy relationships on different places, like Discord and um, other places like that, Mastodon, um, where I'm part of communities. But I'm not addicted to any of them. It's kind of I choose when I go there. Like
Yeah.
it's an intentional thing that and I choose to step away.
Yeah.
And that's a lot healthier, and I still manage to have all the connections and relationships that I've always
Yeah.
had. So that's a really positive thing actually. That's to come out of what's happened, but
Yeah.
unexpected. Um, but yeah, I mean, like what? So we've talked about how like the creative process kind of has an impact on us and transforms us. Like, what did you learn about yourself in writing this book that you maybe didn't know about yourself before?
Oh, wow, that is a really good question. Um, I don't know, like, off the top of my head, if there's one thing I did not know, I think what it did was, um, confirm some things. Like, as I was looking back, I looked back through some journals, I looked back through old books that I wrote, and I could see 2 things. Number 1, the way that I had been misguided and misinformed and was really zealous and on fire for some things that I no longer believe. So I could see that, but I could also see the real me who was in there. She was there, um, she just couldn't be fully herself. So, what I have found since leaving evangelical Christianity, since my husband left, moving back to the States, all of those things, I am on this journey of just becoming who I've always been inside. But either I push some of those things down, like I would read through my journals and I would be talking to God and saying, please help me submit to my husband. Please help me submit to my husband. It's so hard for me to submit to him. Well, it's because some of the things that he was doing and saying weren't great. And I had some better ideas. And I wasn't created to be like this quiet little submissive wife who'd never had an opinion. I have a lot of great ideas. I had a lot of things to say. So I realize now that the things that I was fighting, I don't need to fight that anymore. I don't need to fight who I am. And I may be too much for some people, but those are not the people, those aren't my people. Like if I'm too much for them. And um I've learned that I've always had this love in my heart. Um and I like when I really, really, really wanted to be a missionary, that was born out of love for people who I thought were going to hell. And so I became a missionary with that good intention, with that heart of love. But now I no longer believe in hell and I no longer believe in white people going over to other countries and forcing people to be Christians. But I still have that love, and I can express that love and share that love in other better, healthier ways. So I think if it was one thing that I learned, it was that I do love who I am, and who I've always been, but I didn't always get to be her. I didn't have the freedom to be her. And sure, there are some things that I want to work on or habits that aren't great. And I'm doing that too, but I'm really enjoying the process, and learning to love myself is really, really important if I'm going to love other people. And that's what I think a lot of Christians get wrong is they call themselves wretched worms and worthless without God and all of that. And then that's how they see their neighbor too, as dirty, evil sinners without God. And I don't see people like that anymore. And I don't see myself like that. So, in loving myself, I can love the people around me more. And I've also found God in myself instead of denying myself or giving everything up and saying that Christ must increase and I must decrease and all that jargon that we use. I found that the more I get to know myself, the closer I feel to God. And I don't know what I believe about God, but any kind of divine presence, I believe, is largely inside of me. And I know for Christians, and I just saw this somewhere on the internet a couple weeks ago, but they were saying, so you've got we're supposed to listen to God, listen to the Holy Spirit, but not listen to our own hearts. Well, how are you supposed to know like which thing is God and which thing is your heart? And then they say, well, your pastor can tell you, or you can listen to your pastor. I'm like, oh, that sounds a lot like just listening to someone else. So I've been having a lot of back and forth with people about God and what we believe about God. I had someone on Facebook just this week tell me it was in response to a memory that I had shared, and this memory from like 10 years ago. I was saying praise you Jesus, because we found this perfect house, and I was giving God all the credit. And I said, I don't do that now. Like I don't what I don't like is when we give God all the credit and none of the blame. And then she came in, and this is someone who knew me a long, long time ago, and she said that I should read the Gospel of John, and I shouldn't use anybody else's words, and I should let God speak to me through the Gospel of John. And if God spoke to me, then I should listen. And if God didn't speak to me, then I could walk away from God. And I was like, listen, sister, I've read the Gospel of John like 50 times. This is just, how do you know? Like if I were to sit down and read the Gospel of John right now, and I felt something, how would I know if that was God speaking to me or if it was me? Like I just finished President Barack Obama's first presidential memoir. I finished that yesterday. And there were parts of that that just felt like it was really speaking to me. Was that God speaking to me? Was that Barack Obama speaking to me? Was that me? So I'm just really, I don't use those same like spiritual platitudes and things that I used to, and I'm still figuring that out. And but most importantly, I want to know myself, like what I love, how I how things are with me when I'm at my healthiest, what I need um, to fill me up so that I can give to other people. Like you were saying that writing is super emotional for you and burns you out. Like I was telling another friend who wrote a book about unhoused people in this homeless ministry, and I used to be really involved in that. I got so burnt out with like helping people in different capacities that I feel like I can't do that right now. Like I can't
Mm,
go out and serve in a soup kitchen, or I can't do this or I can't do that. Like the very thought of it just makes my skin crawl. Like I don't, and so that's something else I have to work through. Is that just me being burnt out? Is that due to trauma that happened while I was doing those things? Is it connected to my changing beliefs? Um, but yeah, there are seasons of our lives, I think, where um, maybe we can't do certain things, and we have to know, what do I need right now to heal, to be emotionally whole. Um, and
mm,
sometimes it's just rest, sometimes it's just time. And yeah, those are the kinds of things that I'm working through. A friend told me today, and I was kind of disappointed because she said that my deconstruction made her heart ache. Like it made her heart ache to see me go through this. And I was like, really? Well, your heart doesn't need to ache because I have found freedom. Um, but to her, she was like, this is really sad that Marla has gone through this and now doesn't believe XYZ.
mm,
Um, so being misunderstood is hard for me. Like I don't like to be misunderstood. I mean, nobody does. But I have to accept the fact that not everybody's going to get me. They're not all going to understand. And I'm still working to understand myself. So I can't really expect them to if I
mm.
don't.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, it's a journey, isn't it? It's one day at a time.
Yeah, it is.
Um, we're learning all the time. That's the thing, is to always be open to learning and unlearning and relearning and all of that, and that without any kind of destination in mind, because there isn't a destination really. It's just the next chapter. You know.
That's tough for people. People want a destination. They want certainty. They want to know what's next, what's this, what's that. And but you're right. Like I've gotten a lot better at that, just being open-handed and saying, we'll just see. We'll take it one day at a time. Not that you can't plan for things or have goals or dreams, um, but just holding on to things loosely and not having to know, because we don't really know. Like I've had friends say, "Oh, I miss the certainty of knowing all of the things." And I'm like, "Well, you realize you didn't really know them. You thought you knew them. So you miss the certainty of thinking you know everything."
That's
But
it.
none of us can know God for like we can't know God for certain. We can't know about heaven and hell for certain. We can't know um anything really for certain.
Absolutely, yeah. That's part of the journey, is realizing that nothing is certain and having to come to terms with that, because it's not easy. So yeah. So if there's one thing that you've learned from writing this book and from your journey so far, that you want people to know, what would that be?
If I had to pick one thing, I would just say that love is everything. Like that's really the only thing that we have that can be the guiding force. If I mean, obviously, we can't agree on what God is or what the truth is or religion is, which one's best. There are all these wars being fought, and then um, fights online and all of this, all because of people's beliefs about God. So if we can just have love as our guiding force, and again, I know that that's it's not super concrete, but I think that's kind of the point. If you can say, what is the most loving thing I can do here? Or what's the most loving answer here? What's the most loving decision I can make? And what that involves is finding out from the other person what feels loving to them. And I talk about in Unbelieve that I had someone who would always say to me that sometimes love feels like hate. And they were referring to, they believed that it was a sin to be gay. So if you really loved your gay friend, you would tell them they were going to hell so that you could save them. So even though it sounded hateful, it was really loving because you were ultimately saving them from a fiery hell. And I'm saying, what feels loving to the person that you're trying to love? Not what you think is loving based on some belief or based on a book or based on what your church said. What feels loving to that other person? And so then when we talk about who we're voting for or what laws we're passing or all of or how we act and what we say, is it loving? And so that's what I would say for me is that I want love to be what guides me, not not the Bible, not what a pastor says, not what a creed or a doctrine says. Um, I just want to love people, and you can find a lot of that goodness in the Bible if you're looking there. There's a whole lot of things like loving people like you want to be loved, treat people like you want to be treated. Um, so yeah, I would say that's the thing that I have learned to live to live for love. And like you said, since things are we don't well, they're uncertain, we don't know what if we don't know if we have another day. And just loving with all you've got today and then again tomorrow and the next day. Um, so yeah, love is my answer.
I love that. I love that. That's brilliant. Thank you, Marla. It's always great to have you on the show. Highly recommend this book, Jaded. It's out now. It's out now.
Yes.
And just wherever books are sold, just go and get the book. It's brilliant, and yeah, Marla's a very talented writer and poet. So definitely check it out. And where can people find you online, Marla?
Well, first of all, thank you, James. That was very kind of you. And I spend most of my time, if we're talking time wise, on Instagram, probably. I'm Marla Taviano on Instagram. I also have an account called White Girl Learning, where I post books by Black authors, Indigenous authors, other authors of color. And I am on Twitter occasionally at Marla Taviano. I have a website, marlataviano.com. And I pretty much avoid Facebook, and I haven't really gotten connected on many of the other. I've started out like some of those new social platforms, but I haven't really
Mm,
gotten too plugged in there. So yeah, and
great.
I love talking to people, meeting people. Love to hear your stories, and yeah. So thank you so much. It's so great to talk to you, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. It's always great to have you here. And thanks for listening, everybody.